The rain came down in sheets that late evening, streaking the city sidewalks in silver rivers under the flickering glow of neon shop signs. Daniel Brooks adjusted the hood of his worn jacket and pulled his daughter closer beneath the umbrella. At 43, he carried the weight of two lives, his own and little Emily's. A single dad, a veteran who had seen too much of war and not enough of peace, he had learned that battles weren't always fought on foreign soil. Sometimes, they were waged in grocery aisles, job interviews, and lonely kitchens where silence pressed heavier than the memories of gunfire. Daniel had promised Emily a simple treat that night, just a carton of her favorite chocolate milk and some bread for the week. Money was tight, as it always was, but he tried to shield her from that reality. The local grocery store was familiar to them both, a place where Daniel felt almost invisible, blending in among hurried shoppers. But that night, invisibility shattered into something unforgettable. As he guided Emily past the checkout lanes, a commotion near the front drew his attention. A woman stood frozen, her hands slightly raised, her dark coat damp with rain. Two store security guards flanked her, their voices sharp and accusing. "We saw you slip it into your bag. Don't even try to deny it," one barked. The woman's eyes, clear but tired, met theirs steadily. She didn't look like a thief. Her bearing was too composed, her voice too calm. "You're making a mistake," she said, her tone steady but tinged with restrained anger. "I didn't steal anything." Daniel felt Emily squeeze his hand. "Daddy," she whispered, "they're being mean." He could see the fear in her eyes, the memory of times when authority had loomed too large and too cruel. He knelt briefly, smoothing her hair. "Stay here," he murmured, his voice low. He couldn't just walk past. Not after all he had seen, all he had fought for. Justice wasn't a word to him, it was a promise he still believed in. Approaching the scene, Daniel immediately caught the subtle details. The woman's posture was defensive but not panicked, her coat unzipped with nothing hidden. The small canvas bag at her side looked ordinary, with groceries clearly visible. Yet the guards were relentless, holding her as if she were already guilty. "Call the cops," one of them snapped. "We've got her." The other tightened his grip on her arm. And that's when Daniel noticed Emily watching, trembling, her little world absorbing every injustice like a sponge. "Excuse me," Daniel said, his voice carrying the quiet steel of command that came from years in uniform. The guards turned, sizing him up, a man in faded jeans and boots, not exactly imposing at first glance. But his eyes, cold and unwavering, made them hesitate. "What exactly are you accusing this woman of?" he asked. "She stole," one guard answered. "We saw her slip a bottle into her bag." Daniel's gaze flicked to the bag. Bread, milk, fruit, but nothing concealed. He stepped closer, ignoring the tension rising in the air. "Then check it properly, right here, in front of everyone. No intimidation, no grabbing. If you're so sure, let's see." The woman's eyes flickered with surprise at his intervention. For a moment, something softened in her expression, though she said nothing. The guards looked uneasy but complied, emptying the bag onto a nearby counter. Item after item came out, none unpaid for, none hidden. A small receipt fluttered from the top pocket, damp from the rain but clearly marked. She had paid. Every cent accounted for. "Looks like your eyes play tricks on you," Daniel said evenly. "You owe her an apology." The guards stiffened, embarrassed, their authority slipping. "Stay out of this, sir. We know what we saw." Daniel stepped forward then, his voice dropping into the unshakable tone he had once used to steady terrified soldiers in the field. "No. What I see is a woman being treated like a criminal without evidence. What I see is abuse of power. And I won't stand by." For a heartbeat, silence stretched between them. Then the woman finally spoke, her voice measured. "He's right. You've made a serious mistake." Slowly, she reached into her pocket, pulling out a slim wallet. She flipped it open, revealing a badge gleaming under the fluorescent lights. The guards froze. Daniel blinked, startled. The emblem read, Captain Maria Alvarez, Metropolitan Police Department. The shift in the air was immediate. Shock, then panic, crossed the guards' faces. "See, Captain, we didn't," one stammered, but Maria's voice cut clean through. "Save it. I've seen enough." She pocketed the badge and finally turned her gaze to Daniel. For the first time, her stern composure softened into something resembling gratitude. "And I've seen enough of you, too. You didn't have to step in. But you did." Daniel gave a small shrug. "I've spent too many years watching good people get trampled. I won't let my daughter grow up thinking silence is the safer choice." He glanced at Emily, who clung to his side, eyes wide with relief now that the tension had broken. Maria studied him with a quiet intensity, as though weighing not just his words but the years behind them. She saw the exhaustion etched in his face, the strength that hadn't been extinguished despite it. For a long moment, she said nothing, then finally, "You're a veteran, aren't you?" Daniel gave a short nod. "Afghanistan. 2 tours." Something flickered in her eyes, understanding, respect, a trace of shared battle scars even if her wars had been different. "I owe you more than a thank you," she said firmly. "You stood up when you didn't have to. And tonight, that means more than you know." It wasn't until they left the store, the rain easing into a light drizzle, that Daniel realized Emily was humming beside him, her little hand swinging free. She looked up at him, smiling shyly. "Daddy, you were like a superhero." The words sank deep, warming something in him that had long felt cold. He smiled back, ruffling her hair. "Not a superhero, kiddo. Just someone who doesn't like bullies." What Daniel didn't know was that their paths with Maria Alvarez were only beginning to cross. A week later, a knock on his apartment door startled him. Standing there, crisp in plain clothes but unmistakably authoritative, was Maria. She carried a small bag in one hand and a faint smile on her face. "I did some digging," she said without preamble. "I hope you don't mind. I wanted to know more about the man who stood up for me." Daniel shifted uneasily, unused to attention. "Not much to know. Just a dad trying to make ends meet." But Maria stepped inside, her eyes scanning the modest apartment, the worn couch, the drawings Emily had taped proudly to the walls. Her expression softened again. "You've been carrying more than your share," she said quietly. "I can see that." Over cups of lukewarm coffee at his kitchen table, she asked about his service, his struggles since leaving the army, the odd jobs that barely covered rent. For once, Daniel found himself speaking honestly, without the weight of judgment pressing on him. And in return, Maria shared her own battles, the loneliness of leadership, the constant fight to prove herself in a department where respect came grudgingly. By the time she left, there was a strange sense of connection between them, something unspoken but real. Days turned into weeks, and their paths continued to cross. Sometimes at the park where Emily played, sometimes when Maria stopped by with groceries, accidentally bought extra. Slowly, the walls Daniel had built around his life began to crack. Yet, it wasn't without challenges. One evening, Emily came home from school in tears. Another child had mocked her for not having a real family, for not having a mother. Daniel's heart broke as he held her close, unsure how to protect her from the cruelty of the world. That night, when Maria visited, Emily ran straight into her arms. And Maria, without hesitation, held her as though she had been waiting all along. "You're not alone," Maria whispered to both of them. "Neither of you." It was then Daniel realized that sometimes, the people who enter our lives unexpectedly are the ones meant to stay. Months later, when the department honored Maria for her integrity and service, she requested Daniel and Emily sit in the front row. As she stood at the podium, her speech carried not just the weight of her badge but the warmth of someone who had found family in the most unexpected of places.